Bit of a different video today. In an effort to get more heat check scouting reports done ahead of the 24 NBA draft, I've decided to package 3 together and quickly hit on some of the high and low points of these prospects while still divvying out grades. Today's video features 3 guards, Duke's Jared McCain, USC's Isaiah Collier, and Providence's Devin Carter. Here's how heat check works. I'm going to identify one draft prospect and grade them on what I believe to be the most generally important skills and aspects of their game: athleticism, scoring, defense, passing and playmaking, and overall feel for the game. After those 5, I'll grade one additional skill relative to that prospect that I think is going to have the biggest effect on their stock. That will be deemed the swing skill. Each skill will be graded on the heat check chart with ranges from freezing all the way to scorching. When that's all said and done, I'll divvy out one final overall score. We're going to start with the prospect I really like, Duke's Jared McCain. He's a 6'3" combo guard and a former 5-star who was highly touted but had a ton of question marks coming into this season, most of which were quelled in him earning a starting spot with the Blue Devils and averaging 14.3 points, 5 rebounds, and just shy of 2 assists per game en route to an Elite 8 appearance. He is a tad on the older side for a freshman at slightly over 20 on draft night. McCain is a below average athlete, especially in the verticality department, and he doesn't necessarily boast things like a lightning quick first step, burst, or acceleration either. I do think the horizontal athleticism is just fine, which lends itself well to his style. A few more pluses in this category are elite coordination overall, and while he's not speedy, I do think there can be a certain swiftness and decisiveness to his game, but overall McCain is just not a player that relies on pure athleticism to get his. Where McCain does thrive is in the scoring department. Over 14 points per game on 46, 41, 89 splits as a freshman are wildly efficient stats, and the tape backs him up. At his core, McCain is a shooter. He scored a whopping 68% of his field goal points on jump shots, with nearly half of those coming on simple catch and shoot attempts, where he converted at 42%. He's got a silky smooth release that is highly replicable. He attempted nearly 6 threes per game with the Blue Devils, cashing in on 2.5 per game. There's really great shot variety intermingled, with him stopping on a dime in transition, coming off screens, and plenty more. Suffice to say, McCain can fill it up from range, and while he doesn't have that teleportation level skill in getting to the rim, he is a pretty adept finisher there, 62% inside. He's got a straightforward but effective handle capable of getting him to his spots on the floor, and he plays with great pace that typically results in good things happening. While most of his rim attempts came in transition, he was also elite in moderate pick and roll reps, grading excellent percentage on 69 possessions. The last thing to touch on here is his ability to pull up off the dribble, both in the mid-range and from deep. He saw a ton of volume in these situations, using acute instincts and lightning quick adjustments that effectively make him a 3-level scorer. Defensively, McCain holds his own surprisingly well for a 6'3" combo guard. It's something he's vocally taken pride in, even dating back to his prep days, and that materialized with over a steal per game in college. He's pretty active on ball, sliding his feet, flipping his hips, and generally staying pretty handsy, even if things don't always work out in his favor. Off ball, he's attentive and reactive enough to hold his own. I think we'd be remiss to say that McCain will be a defensive force in the NBA at any point, especially given the fact he'll be playing the essential 2 with poor length, but we can take some solace in the fact that this won't be a seriously detrimental skill. McCain had just 68 assists, but that doesn't necessarily tell the full picture in terms of his passing ability. He's got great court awareness and real passing prowess. He's definitely more equipped for connective passing and running offense, opposed to truly being let loose in isolation, which does affect his role as a combo guard, but in those scenarios he exhibited really strong touch and getting the ball where it needed to go, be it to someone streaking in transition, loading up in the corner, or skying for a lob. Parlaying that right into feel for the game, I think McCain is one of the highest feel players in this class, as showcased by him immediately winning the starting job at Duke and making an impact all season long. Huge care factor, obviously smart player who constantly makes the right and impactful play, and best of all, he's capable of melting into whatever backcourt role you need. McCain's swing skill revolves less around one skill and more so around his combination of skills that leave him in kind of a weird middle ground of an NBA backcourt. Very strong shooter but undersized for a 2 guard, likely not yet capable of a full-time handling role but has some winning tendencies in that area. Ultimately, teams will have to decide whether he's a worthy gamble with his amalgamation of skills or not. The grade, I've graded Jared McCain a 7.7, and that should land him as a fringe top 10 pick in my book. I actually landed much higher on McCain than I anticipated coming into this thing. I really love his modern offensive skill set in that he can hit threes and shots off the dribble at a high rate, with some set playmaking and ball handling intertwined into his game. The things like defensive care factor, feel for the game, high basketball IQ, and more, raise the floor, and to me cement him as an impactful contributor for years to come. I don't quite know what that looks like yet, whether he's a 6-man or 2-guard in a system with a jumbo handler. Either way, I really trust him being able to find his way onto the NBA court. Moving on to a very different prospect than Isaiah Collier, a stocky 6'3" true point guard who saw a roller coaster season for the USC Trojans. He came in as the #1 player per RSCI, but saw some nagging injuries and inefficiencies and turnovers mar the beginning of his season. Overall, though, he finished the year averaging 16.3 points, 4.3 assists on 49, 34, 67 splits, and he feels like one of a few prospects in this draft with legit star power. Athletically, Collier is pretty average, unable to really sky around the rim vertically, posting a 34-inch max vertical at the draft combine, and not necessarily boasting any outright elite skills like speed, burst, or explosion. Rather, Collier uses his bulky frame, above average guard strength, and combination of quickness, handle, and more to dive to the rim or get out in the open floor. Collier certainly isn't a negative athlete, but isn't one that's going to shock and awe either. Collier's bread and butter is scoring the basketball. It's why many thought he could be the top pick in this draft, and despite some real wavering on this end overall in his lone year with the Trojans, I think many would have taken over 16 points per game on 50% shooting overall. He is a lead guard through and through, primarily functioning as a shifty strength creator who can get downhill and finish through contact in a variety of ways. One of the reasons for his star power is his creation ability, where he can pull paint attempts out of ball screens, in transition, and even out of thin air via isolation. He scored nearly half of his field goal points in the pick and roll, grading good per synergy, and another large chunk in transition. He managed to finish 61% at the rim on phenomenal volume, a really great indicator for his playstyle, in addition to displaying a ton of great finishing creativity on tape. Collier's jump shooting is a real work in progress. The numbers aren't great, 35% on jumpers, 37% on catch and shoot shots, etc., but they are workable. His situation at USC was a bit of a mess. The team was not good, he suffered ticky-tack injuries early in the season, and his process in general was just marred by sloppiness. Of all the players in this class who could be helped by NBA schemes and spacing, Collier might be aided the most from more room to operate if a team is willing to put the ball in his hands. His pedigree, uptick in production late, and obvious talent make him a really intriguing point guard prospect. To this point, Collier is likely a negative on the defensive end of the court. His strength does give him a leg up in certain matchups, and he averaged 1.5 steals per game hounding lanes, but at 6'3", he's ultimately too inconsistent overall, especially when put in ball screen situations. There are times when you can really see him lock in, and he uses some of that same snappy movement he does on offense to hound a ball handler, and that's a great thing, but ultimately something I'm not going to bet on in such limited sample. For as up and down as Collier's scoring can be, his passing and playmaking is likely the most polarizing part of his game. There's a huge sample of both highlights and lowlights in this category. I myself land on the positive side of this, again due to the NBA fitting his style better and me buying into the upside. He averaged 4.3 assists to 3.3 turnovers per game, an obviously high mark, but he has some really obvious passing talent spurred from his self-creation. He's able to access near anywhere on the court, create windows, and capitalize on them with timely accuracy and velocity. The lows all seem to stem from decision making rather than ability. He has a tendency to force it in traffic, make the wrong decision when deciding to score or dish the rock, and at times is just careless with the ball. With him being a lead guard, this is an obviously massive swing, and it could be the difference for you in him being a top prospect or falling pretty far. And for those very same reasons, I've gone with the median on his feel for the game too. I think there's some real highs in his preternatural ability to score and facilitate, but some real lows in his decision making, passing, and playmaking. Collier's swing skill could be a few different things, but ultimately I've gone with the shooting in that his outside numbers blossoming or even just remaining league average would be a huge service to the rest of his game. Collier shot just 34% on 3 attempts per game from outside, not great numbers for an on-ball guard, and some other indicators like shot selection, a 67% free throw rate, and really hot, cold stretches also don't lend themselves to strong shooting down the road. But despite those bad indicators, there's a ton of blatant feel and some reason for hope, in my opinion, for Collier on that front. The grade, I've given Collier a grade of 7.9, which is likely much higher than his stock suggests right now. There are a ton of caveats to that score in that he'll need the right situation, aka the basketball, and a team to teach him good habits, but I do think Collier possesses an immense amount of talent and could be a sleeping giant in this draft. Collier is a make-or-break prospect as an evaluator. If you have him low, he blossoms, and it's how did you pass on him, it was obvious. And if you have him high, it's the signs of inefficiency and turnovers were there, why did you have him so high? Ultimately though, I really lean towards Collier being a worthy pick in 24 for those in need of a potentially dynamic point guard. And finally, we have Providence combo guard Devin Carter, who's been a known factor on the defensive end of the court for a few seasons now, but saw an offensive surge to blossom into a strong NBA prospect. He stands at 6'3" with a 6'9" wingspan, a strong mark for his play style, and finished his junior season with the Friars averaging 19.7 points, a whopping 8.7 rebounds, 3.6 assists, almost 2 steals, and 1 blocks per game, while shooting 47% overall, 38% from beyond the arc, and 75% from the charity stripe. Athletically, Carter has some functional verticality. He's especially quick going east-west when defending, and has real speed and quickness with the ball in hands. He even dunked it 25 times, a pretty great mark for a 6'3" guard. But athleticism is just not something that's going to be infused into his NBA game, which is why he's ranked warm here, especially considering he's going to be a de facto 2 guard, which we'll get into. Carter's improved scoring is one of the primary reasons he's now viewed as a potential lottery or even top 10 pick in 2024. He ballooned his points per game from 13 last season to nearly 20 this year and showed obvious improvement all over the court. He's a firecracker all the time, but especially in hunting to score the rock, which is still his offensive identity. His 3 primary modes of offense were 167 points in transition, 151 as the pick and roll handler, one of his better offensive skills in utilizing his innate craft, and then 116 points spotting up. And for the most part, he was elite at those things. As you can tell from the tape, his motor rivals that of a 65 Mustang. He runs in transition constantly, finished 66% at the rim, using his combination of skills to zigzag his way there and finish through physical defense. And most importantly, he shot 38% from 3 on nearly 7 attempts, massively improving in that area. Due to some questionable decision making overall, Carter probably projects to be more of a 2 guard in the NBA, not incapable of operating with the ball in hands of course, but not quite handling the lead duties either. And I think despite his offensive renaissance in his junior season, that does raise some real questions. Can he continue to shoot at a high level? Will he overcome some offensive limitations as a 6'3" shooting guard? Will he be good enough in ball screen situations or transition to warrant playing him heavy minutes? And if you think the answer is yes based off the stats and tape, Devin Carter's probably your guy because his defense remains the selling point. He is very much the full package as a guard on the defensive end. He suffocates at the point of attack using his length, high intensity, and premier instincts to stick around and disrupt. His off-ball defense is the sequel of that, using a lot of the same attributes mixed with great awareness, and those things led to a phenomenal 2.8 stocks per game, 1.8 steals, and 1 block. The steals speak for themselves, but his high number of blocks for a 6'3" guard are birthed from that length, pretty good shot block timing, and competitiveness. And best of all, those same offensive issues with him playing the 2 don't quite apply with him having a confirmed 6'9" wingspan, perfect for sizing up to shooting guards, and potentially even more. Carter averaged 3.6 assists to 2.7 turnovers per game, 120 to 89 overall, which is mostly fine, earning him a warm grade, but his skill set does not scream point guard. Ultimately, he'll likely scale into a shooting guard with some connective upside, and that he can keep the ball moving and run sets with ease, but it's clear that even with some tuning up, his fast-paced style is sure to lead to some blunders. And that's really the same sentiment I hold with Carter's overall feel for the game too. While his defensive instincts really shine, there are a few too many bad shots, passes, and general mistakes that leave me a little lower on his feel overall despite his pure impact. Carter's swing skill would likely be continuing to improve his general playmaking, but I just really struggle to see teams ever using him as a primary point guard for the aforementioned reasons, and I think most scouting departments at this point in time are probably more keen on finding out whether or not the shooting is real. In his freshman and sophomore seasons, Carter shot just 29% on less than 3 attempts from beyond the arc. Suffice it to say, his leap to 38% on nearly 7 attempts leaves some questions about the authenticity of it and where he'll fall within the shooting spectrum. I personally buy into Carter as a shooter based off the pretty insane volume and clear touch and comfortability this last season, but I don't really lean into him being an elite shooter, and that could lead to some snags in his NBA fit overall. The grade. I've given Carter a grade of 7.6, likely marking him lower than the consensus just a little bit for me, but still making him plenty worthy of an end of lottery or mid-first selection in 2024. I have absolutely no doubts that Carter is going to find his way onto the NBA court with tenacious defense, a high motor on both ends, and some translatable translatable offensive skills. But I ultimately have a few too many questions regarding his late bloom offensively, future fit, and overall feel for the game. That being said, I still think NBA starter could be in his future, and I think he's a great swing for teams just outside the lottery who need immediate guard depth, and he's got all the intangibles an NBA team could want.